All right, good morning. It is Monday, and of course, it's the Lemlin Day, or whatever you guys called it in there. No gremlins, all lemlins, I guess. But yes, it's Gremlin Monday. What do you expect, man? After multiple tornadoes touched down over the weekend, and my sincerest, heartfelt sympathies to all the families affected here in Michigan and throughout the country. There's just been a rash of tornadoes everywhere. Kansas got extremely hit hard yesterday, last night, and of course Michiganders did, and it took almost 4 days to get power back. So expected to have some issues, and of course we're having some. We're trying to work it out. Let me try to get Corey in here and see if it's any better yet. If it is, great. If it's not, great. We're going to try to roll through it. You're just going to have to let us know in the chat if it's extremely bad. We'll do our best. One second here. Anyway, we got a good show packed up for you guys today, or lined up for you today. A lot of news and rumors, a lot of NFL stuff happening right now, especially with 18 games apparently on the docket, and that's what we're going to be talking about first. Is it's something I've spoken about already, but it's starting to catch a little bit of wind behind its sails. Well, let me get Corey in here. Corey, did we get any better?
I don't know. You tell me, brother.
We didn't.
Ugh.
So I even checked the studio, man. Someone changed some things on the back end. I'm not sure how. I'm just going to blame it on the NATOs. But it didn't make a difference. So how bad is it in the chat? If you guys can let us know that they hear the static too.
Static. Oh, man.
I don't know what it is.
Weird. That is so weird.
Do you guys have static from me? So I don't hear static on my end. I just hear static on
Very
his end.
static, they say.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to get off and figure something out.
Okay.
I'm going to try and get back in.
Yep, I'll see you. I'll see you out in the back room when you rejoin.
Yep.
All right, buddy. Okay, I'm just going to get rolling. So I apologize for all the delays. We'll get it figured out. Of course, tomorrow is going to be either a light day or no day, because then I take off to Naples, and then I'll be back. We'll be rolling by next week, Monday. But let's get into the 18-game situation here. So the proposal for an 18-game season with the NFL has been flirted now, or at least a topic of discussion for years. And it's been kind of taking shape over the last several months, simply because the collective bargaining agreement, which I think it expires in another 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 4 years, is like the first thing they want to pass, from what I'm hearing. From what I'm understanding, they want to increase revenue. And the best way to increase revenue, obviously, is add another game. You guys know me by now and how I feel about player safety, and quite simply with the schedule. This is why this topic is so hot right now, I believe. When you look at the Lions schedule and you see that they play 2 games on 4 days rest, barely 4 days rest, one of which they have to travel to the Vikings on Christmas. To me, the NFL is saying a lot, not doing enough. I don't think it's fair to any of these players, no matter what team it is, to play on 4 days rest. Once in a great while, you might be able to get away with it. But having a team do it twice in a month, that's simply just not fair. Not only to them, but, I think the fans too. I mean, we're having to turn right around and go watch another game, whether it be having to travel or get back to the stadium. It's financially prohibitive, for a lot of fans to be able to do that. So not to say that they won't sell out the stadiums, because they probably will, but I don't think it's fair. So maybe 18 games will fix this issue. I think what they need to do right now is implement a second bye week before they input an 18th game. Why not do a second bye week now? Give these guys a little bit more rest throughout the season. I think you'll have better play on the field. And then you can add that 18th game probably seamlessly, right? You're going to get rid of a preseason game to do it, which didn't happen for the Lions this year, by the way. The Lions have 4 preseason games this year, so they're playing 21 games before the playoffs start. With the Hall of Fame game and then 3 preseason games, having that extra preseason game, it'll help certain players. We'll talk about that later on too. But I think that this 18 games should happen only because of the bye week. They need to add that extra bye week. So the key points of this discussion, which kind of talked about it throughout the weekend, is the push for an 18-game schedule. Roger Goodell has advocated for 18 games, suggesting that it would generate additional revenue and enhance the viewing experience. Let's just be real here. It's all about the money. Now, what they state is that the opportunity for more player revenue is there. So maybe this raises the salary cap a little bit more than what we've already seen to be able to extend to 18 games. There's been safety concerns flirted with this and having to play so many games throughout the season, but they already are. And they're already preparing for it, no matter what, throughout the season. They're preparing to play for at least 18 games when you include the preseason. Now, not all the starters play in the preseason. So I get it from that perspective as to why that there's a little bit of player resistance right now. That they're thinking, well, look, you guys are just going to put us in harm's way. And I can't imagine anywhere that the Lions would not want to have an 18th game as long as they had an extra bye week. I think the biggest mess and I'm kind of going back and forth between two topics, is the strategic nature of these bye weeks. I've been saying it for years now. The Lions get screwed because of Thanksgiving. And now the NFL added all of these Christmas Day games, and that's really thrown a big monkey wrench into all of this. But for the Lions to consistently get screwed around Thanksgiving and not get a later bye week, I don't think it's fair at all. They should definitely have an extra bye week in there. Or how about, for instance, you've got, let's see, who opens up in week 1 in London? Isn't that the Chargers? I think it's the Chargers that are going to London in week 1. And then there's no bye weeks in the first, couple of weeks of the season. It doesn't hit until week 4, I believe. So they don't even get a bye week coming back from a London game. And then they have to roll right into a Monday game. Now they get an extra day of rest, but that's all travel. It's a long distance, plane ride all the way from London back to the States. I don't care what side of the country you're going to. It's a long flight. So they get screwed. So it's not just about the Lions. There needs to be something done with more bye weeks. This has been my hard-lined opinion on this for a long time. And again, it's not so much, just for the Lions, but I do believe the NFL would benefit. Why would they lose any revenue by having a bye week, right? I don't think that they would at all. You can still have games every bye week like they do now. But I think if you put in a definitive bye week that, hey, this half of the NFL is off in this bye week, let's call it week 8. Everyone gets or half the league gets a week 8. And then there's like a week 13 or a week 14. Or around Thanksgiving, whenever that is, right? There's another bye week. So the teams that are playing on Thanksgiving, you're going to get a bye week either before or after that game. You don't need 7, 8, 9, 10 bye weeks then. I get it. You have to do it for scheduling purposes. But you could have 2 definitive bye weeks, half off on this one, half off on this one, and it makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. I don't do the schedules for a living, so maybe it doesn't make sense. Is there any economic implications? It's just revenue. I think it's just all money that they're concerned about. And like I said, to start this topic out, the NFL says a lot. They're not doing enough. Let me see if Corey, hopefully he's better now. We might just have to deal with a little bit of static today, if it is. Let's see. Let me get him back in here. All right, you're back with us. Hopefully no static. Are you good?
What is this?
Oh no, you got a little bit of a delay in there too.
Wow.
Is your
Everything's
okay?
happening.
So do this. Why don't you turn your gain down a couple of notches?
Okay.
All right, then double check your PC volume. Like go to your mic settings volume.
Yep.
And tell me what that's at, please.
It is at Hi, Brandy. My input volume is at 82.
Okay.
Regular volume 42. Is it that bad? I changed my light to a hardwired. I thought it might be something plugged into my power strip, and I thought I might have figured it out. I guess not.
I don't know, man. It's Monday. We're gonna roll with it as best we can. I'm gonna
right.
try to turn you down, but at the same time turn you up. I'm just wondering if our gain is too
So weird.
Gain is too hot, and that's causing the static.
Got it down low now.
I see. I had this happen to me before, and it was all related to gain, but it was also my internet. So, unless you got to update drivers on your PC, which maybe afterwards you can see if maybe you got some drivers to update. But anyway, I was talking about 18 games, and my main points here are, Roger Goodell pushing for an 18 game schedule because of the revenue. There's a little bit of player resistance because concerns over injury risk, and the NFL just hasn't done a good job at, in my opinion, making the schedule work for the teams that are either traveling long distances. For instance, I think it's the first week that the Chargers go out to London, they come back, they have to turn around and travel again because stadiums were closed. And I never understood this part of the NFL. Why are they blocking weeks during the season where stadiums aren't open? In my opinion, I think that, okay, you just do the schedule. Maybe you try to do the schedule a little bit earlier in the season instead of May 18 or May 15 and having it done. Maybe you get it done a month earlier and then you open up the rest of the weeks for, tours, whether it's musicians or whatever coming in, but that's not the case. They're booking tours. Now, look, I'm not some schedule, I don't know all this stuff, but for the layman guy, I would think that it would just be easier to say, okay, it's wide open, hurry up and get it done. And then we can open up the schedule to tours, musicians that want to come in. What are your thoughts on 18 games, given the fact that what you see with the Lions schedule right now, 2 games in 1 month, only 4 days off, and one of them is traveling to Minnesota? It's not fair to the guys. And I think that if you were to even add an 18th game and a second bye week, which is my stance, you have to have a second bye week, that maybe it makes things a little bit easier on the guys. They're already playing 20 games anyway, with preseason. So what's your take on 18 games?
Yeah, 18 games is tough, man. I mean, no one knows football like a football player. And there's, the NFL is always looking for extra ways to make money. So you can understand why they would want to put seats in the stands for another game. But, it just seems like they always talk about safety and they talk about, keeping their players protected. And it doesn't seem like these things line up. So I don't know about the scheduling and how they do the, scheduling of the stadium and musicians and all those things. I'm not well informed on that. But from a football perspective, man, 18 games seems like a long time. Obviously, you're playing, if you want to win the Super Bowl, you're going to play more than 18 games. But when you add an 18th regular season game and then you have we're talking about pushing 21, 22 games or something like that. That'd be crazy.
So I got an idea, or I'm wondering if I'm trying to find my other cord here. I'm wondering if you just call in from your phone. Like you could try the same browser link through your phone if you want to set up your phone. That would work a lot easier. You want to try it?
Let's see. Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. Why don't you give it a shot? It's the same link. Just access it from your phone, and then you just have to put your phone in a way that
I'll try.
It suits you.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll be right back. Okay. Next subject. And look, this one is, well, actually, I forgot a couple of things. Let me back up here. Number one, I want to say good morning to everybody in the chat. I forgot to do that because we're having an off day today, but I can't say enough how much I appreciate all of the moderators, all of the members, and everyone that's been a part of this channel for a long time. You guys are the reason why this channel is here. You've always been the best part of this channel. Appreciate all of you. I really do. And moreover, like I was talking about earlier with the tours, right? So for 2 years now, I've been talking about doing away game takeover tours. And we're going to do it. We have the lock on the hotels and everything else, but now I'm thinking about adding flights instead of long bus tours. But let me kind of give you, what this other company is doing is they're going to fly, right? You're going to be out there for, 3 days. You get a ticket, you do a tailgate, but it's not at the stadium. It's at a restaurant. And you're going to sit up in the nosebleeds. And that's really it. You have a meet and greet. You might meet, Lomas Brown or something, big deal, right? Love Lomas, by the way. For us, it's all about camaraderie. It's about building relationships. It's about building friendships. And you're on a bus for some of these trips that are shorter distances where you're with 50 other fans. You might be on a bus for 3 or 4 hours, but you're fed really good food. You got an opportunity to meet a bunch of people and have really great conversation. It's about the experience, right? When you're on a plane, you guys know as well as I do, there's no conversation. There's no conversation at all. You can talk to the person next to you, but it's not like you can say, hey, Mike, way up in the front of the plane, how's life? You can't do that, right? I mean, even on a bus, it might be a little bit difficult, but you can move around. You can play a little bit of musical chairs. Plane, not so much. So it's all about the experience for me and kind of bridging that gap. We're giving away a minimum of a $500 piece of memorabilia every trip. And you guys get a free raffle ticket to that. So no matter what, I'm not in it. So 1 in 49, chance that you have to win this piece. That's included with your trip. They're giving away a t-shirt. We're doing the same thing. They're giving away a patch. We're giving away a grab bag. So there's all sorts of stuff that could be in this grab bag. We could make a patch, right? We could do that. It's not hard. Their tours are not really listed in full detail. Their deposits are also unrefundable. Might only be a $2.99 deposit, but it's unrefundable. So after the end of the month, of this month, it's unrefundable. Like us, we have to put this out in like 2-week increments because prices will change. Their minimum price was $17.99, including no flight, no travel, no nothing. That's just your hotel and your ticket and the tailgate. $17.99. One person to get all of it, $28.99 for one person. $28.99. And for 2 people, right, it was $5,000. So for us, we started at like $15.99 or $17.99, right around the same price, but that included everything. Just some trips. Some are more expensive than others. So what am I trying to say? You have your choice of going wherever and whoever you want to be with. We're going to be way less expensive, but here's the big kicker. Where's their money going? Is it going to a foundation? Nope. It's not. It's going into the corporate pocket. Ours is going to a foundation. It's going to help out people in the community. So that's the big difference. Now, look, am I going to be mad at you for not coming? No. All I'm saying is this is a better opportunity. It has the same, if not better, hotels and options for travel and inclusions and a real tailgate. Now, there's 2 options in Kansas City. We can either go down and have a 4.5-hour premium tailgate inside the stadium, right? And then go in and sit right behind the Lions bench. We could do that. That's $1,200 a person just for the ticket, right? We could do that. Or we could sit up where everyone else is sitting up in the 300s and you only pay about $400 or $500 a ticket plus the travel and everything else. So I'm trying to put together a website right now, but that way it's a little bit more legit. I'd rather not go through Eventbrite because they're going to charge you guys $200-$300 in fees. Like that's not what we're trying to do. I'd rather see $200-$300 go towards a foundation for every person than go to some company's fees, right? That doesn't help anyone. So anyway, everything's going to be put up this week. There'll be limited time to get deposits in if you want to do it. And we just need at least 35 people to roll a bus. Otherwise, and that's another thing. So I'm going to have another conversation today. Spoke with a company last week, Friday. Maybe it was Saturday, excuse me. And they want to donate. Like they want to give us, free or reduced charter buses. So once we, touch down in the city, they'll be bringing us where we need to go for the weekend. And they're willing to either donate all of that or a large portion of that to help reduce the pricing for us. But then they also want to include us in other things like Tigers tours and, all of the other events. So it sounds like we're going to be working on a partnership this afternoon that will allow us to have more exposure and work with some companies that do this every day and get us into more opportunity. Nationwide, all teams, all tours, all games, even baseball. So that's what we're trying to do here is we're trying to leverage and work on relationships and build relationships for the fans, because to us, that's what it's all about. I don't know if he's rejoined yet. I don't see him back in there. It's just going to be one of those days today. All right, let me get into this next topic. The old Packers, man. Got to throw the Packers in today. So the Packers, according to Matt Schneiderman, says that the Packers have the most to prove in 2025. You guys agree or disagree? Now, I know Eric and I have talked about this a handful of times. What has Jordan Love really accomplished? Has he really, does he deserve this giant contract that he got? Has he proved anything yet? No, I think that he kind of strong-armed. I think he strong-armed the Packers into this deal, primarily because they didn't have another option at quarterback. Everyone's getting a new deal, and Jordan Love's on a 1-year deal, and he wants a new deal, and so he got it, and he was able to force them into overpaying for what he hasn't done. So Mr. Schneiderman here says that at various points throughout the offseason, and it's about various positional groups at the Packers and general manager Brian Gutekunst, they've all noted that the desire for internal improvements, from the roster perspective. And these statements all came amid questions about the need for a proven number one wide receiver and for a primary edge rusher this season. But it was deeper than that. They're saying that Lucas Van Ness, defensive end, that LaFleur after last season said that he had untapped potential. So they want to see, obviously, his season over season improve quite a bit. Quote was, "It's been a good past couple of months, just refocusing, getting my body healthy and ready to go for this upcoming season. I've been out in California, so a little bit of change here from the Midwest. It was great. I feel the best. I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life and really healthy, and I'm ready to go." That's what Lucas Van Ness said. However, LaFleur is saying, look, guys, it's kind of time to put up or shut up. Luke Musgrave, if you remember, the Packers took 2 tight ends in one draft. And I don't want to say it was the same draft of Sam Laporta. And so far, these guys, they really haven't proven anything. So Musgrave had his first 2 years were kind of rocky, right? He had that lacerated kidney. He had ankle surgery. He really hasn't been that field stretcher that Sam Laporta has been, or at least that we thought that Musgrave had the opportunity to do. And if you remember that Musgrave was, he was the highly anticipated tight end coming out of the draft to be this game changer. He hasn't changed anything yet. He hasn't except for jerseys, right? He hasn't changed anything. So I get it. I believe in it. And especially for Jordan Love. Look, this guy, outside of any injuries that he's had to go through, which have been minor to a degree, he had a little bit of growth last year. And there was a stretch during the second half of the season in which, man, he looked great, right? There was a lot of love given back to Love, last year for, a second half of the season that maybe looked like he started to earn his contract. But here's what offensive coordinator had to say. Adam Stenovich about Jordan Love. He said, "It's consistency in everything that he does, improving accuracy, improving his footwork, and just really taking command of another step in the offense. We talked with all of these guys, doing a great job communicating with each other, quarterback to receiver, receiver to O-line, and just making sure everyone's on the same page with each other, not necessarily coach to player, but player to player." So to me, that sounds like maybe that the grit culture, right, or the the identity of this team is still taking shape, that they haven't fully invested yet into each other. And in this last season, or this last off season, they were talking about Kenny Clark and what his opportunity should be in moving forward. He's now making more than $21 million a year, and Clark had his fewest sacks since his 2016 rookie year last year. So they're a little bit concerned that there's been a little bit more of a trail off, right? From these players as opposed to these guys getting better. Looks like Corey's back with us. Let's see if this made the difference. Again, I apologize. It's probably all my fault. So, one sec. Take 3 or 4 or 10. Oh, man, I got to do something with your video. So do you have audio and video for me? Oh, I don't have audio from you. Hold on. Did you double check that your AirPods are selected on your input? How do we not have audio now? Using AirPods, right? You got AirPods in? For some reason, I don't think it's selected on your side. Hold on, buddy.
Can you hear me now?
Got you now.
Screw it. Screw the AirPod.
No, we're good. You're good. You're good. You're good. You're good.
Well, it's not. It's going. I put it on my iPhone now, so it's just coming straight from my iPhone.
Gotcha.
Right.
All right, but this is much better. We don't have any static.
Well,
what?
You have my picture weird, so let's see if I can flip this. Maybe that helps.
No. Hey, there we go.
Yep. You're gonna have to look at my stomach, but hey.
No, I'm gonna fix it real quick. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try. All right. So I was while I'm working on it, I was talking about the 18 games. You started to talk about that, so let's wind back to that. Talk to us about 18 games and how you feel about it. Has there been any conversation, at all between anyone in the NFL? I'm not going to name names, but anyone at all that has had this discussion with you at all?
No, I have not heard anything about 18 games. I don't. Yeah, like I said, I don't know if you heard me before, but I just know that that 18 games is a lot of football games. Like they talk about protecting the players and all that stuff, and it just doesn't seem like that's actually a priority. I don't know. Yeah, I just don't see how they can say one thing and do another. So if you are going to go to 18 games, like you said, a second bye week sounds realistic, but either way, we're extending it out. It's just more money for the NFL, and yeah, it's tough.
It's definitely tough. So my thought process on the whole 18 games, I think you're looking good now, by the way. The whole process for me is, it's this simple, right? You have to be able to get these guys rest. And I want your thoughts on the 4 days of rest. It's hard enough to do one time a year, but 2 times, especially for the Lions. Now, I haven't analyzed all the other schedules. We were going to go through it last week. It just didn't happen. The Lions do it twice in a month. And that is the worst part of their schedule. I mean, week 10 or week 10 or 11, the Commanders game, I think that's week 10. That's where it really starts for them, that they have to play extremely good football. But right after the Eagles game, it's like they're going through this, amazing collection of games in such a short amount of time. So 2 games, 1 month, Thanksgiving, then Christmas, only 4 days rest, and then having to travel to Vikings. This is where I see an 18th game giving them a second bye week. They'd have to do a second bye week. And this is where I think it could improve things at least a little bit. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the rest definitely makes sense. I think having to play games on 4 days rest is just ridiculous. And not only is it hurt the product on the field because of injuries and just overall health, but man, like, you're not prepping for those games, right? If you're recovering, you don't have a normal week of practice. You don't have a normal, schedule. These guys are not getting a chance to go home and see their families probably. And so it really just throws off the routine and rhythm of the season, right? And to have to do that multiple times, it's got to be a challenge for the guys and for fans as well. I mean, it's tough. It's just overall it's a tough situation, and I can see where a second bye would be nice. You fit a little extra rest in there and recovery, and I think these types of situations will really test the depth of a team, right? Like if you have a D line with some extra guys who can rotate in, maybe four days rest becomes an advantage versus another team. But um, yeah, it's just, overall it's just I don't think it's a good situation for the product on the field.
I would agree. I think that this is where we start to see the most injuries stack up with teams is, and then maybe that's some analysis that, maybe I can do in my weird hours, but how many injuries have happened after 4 games of rest? I would love to know that statistic just so I could, talk about it a little bit deeper. Quick shout out to Mike P in the chat. Mike, I didn't know that you guys did not get power back. So Mike is about 25 minutes south of me in Kalamazoo. If there's anything you need, Mike, I will be available this afternoon. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'll do whatever I can do to help you. Just let me know if there's anything I can help you with, man. I'll be more than happy to come on down. Second topic of the day was Packers. And I guess give me your view of the Packers. So before becoming a Lions fan, you were an everybody fan. And the Packers haven't really proved a whole lot with the big contract to Jordan Love and some of the guys that they brought in, Lucas Van Ness, Luke Musgrave, the tight end. He just hasn't done anything yet. Keeson Nixon at cornerback, Kenny Clark, the defensive tackle, kind of had a little bit of a regress last year, but man, he's just a darn good football player. Marshawn Lloyd at running back this year, and then Jaden Reed. So Jaden Reed, not happy, had to ask questions. Am I still the guy here? What are your thoughts on these 7 football players for the Packers and the Packers organization overall? Is this a prove-it year for Jordan Love?
Yeah, I think it is, no doubt. I think anytime you invest years of grooming a guy to give him the role, and then you're still not sure if he's the guy, it obviously is a prove it year. I mean, Packers fans I think would say that they're sure, they love, but I think the rest of the NFL, is still questioning whether he's the guy. And with a coach like LaFleur that is a quarterback guru, an offensive dude, you never know what's going on in his mind and what he's thinking for the future. You got these, when McVay took Stafford instead of Goff, you're taking an older player, but these intangibles, right, matter to those types of coaches. And we don't really get to see behind the curtain with Jordan Love. I know a little bit more because I've seen him train and I know his quarterback coach. And so I've seen that side of it, but he'll have to prove it this year. Guys like Kenny Clark, who have proven it before, are going to have to get back up to their standard of play. And if the Packers want to be good, it's going to take everybody, right? We had years of Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon that were supposed to be a dynamic backfield, and then they were gone, and neither of them are on the team anymore. And so it's interesting to see, how their team has changed over the years, but not really gotten much better or much worse. I think Jaden Reed is a weapon. But he's a very specific type of receiver. He's a slot guy, and I was a slot guy, and you got to kind of know your role. And unless they're going to build the offense around you, you're probably never going to be the guy, right? Wes Welker was never the guy. I mean, he was the guy for Tom Brady, but he wasn't their star receiver. That was Randy Moss, right? You got to have a deep down the field stretcher. And so it's interesting to hear, the interplay between those players and the dynamics that are going on there. It is a prove it year, I think, for the whole team. And the Packers have such a marketable, they franchise. They are one of those teams, right? Like the Cowboys and those types of things that every year the pressure is going to be on the Packers just because of who they are, just because they're at Lambeau and the Lombardi Trophy is named after their coach and stuff. So it's like, man, like if you are the Packers, you better put up or shut up. And if you're Jordan Love, it's time to show why you earned all that money, man. So
yeah, it's time to grit or get off the pot, right? It's time to grit or get off. That should be a shirt, right? That should be a shirt. Off topic today. I forgot to put this one on the sheet this morning. Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy goes from
I was going
Mr.
to talk about that.
Yeah, Mr. Irrelevant to Mr. Moneybags. Look, I'll give you my quick and dirty on the guy. I think he deserves it. I absolutely feel that he deserves it. I'm not even going to start making the comparisons with Jared Goff and the contract, but I will say this about Brad Holmes. Is he not looking like a genius right now? I mean, for getting Jared Goff done early and setting the stage with, will look like a very big contract, but now you're seeing guys like Brock Purdy get $53 million a year. What is your I guess your take on a $265 million contract for Brock Purdy? And now that makes him one of the wealthiest players in franchise history. The deal includes $181 million in total guarantees. Really good guarantee for him. But again, Mr. Irrelevant to Mr. Moneybags. I feel he deserves it. I think he's had a stellar few seasons, with the 49ers. I think for me, the question was when they gutted the team and now they're in that rebuild, that slow rebuild, or, maybe it's a soft rebuild, excuse me. Is he still going to be the football player that he was with those weapons that he had on the field with Debo and everybody else? So what is your thoughts on this deal for Purdy and the longevity of the team?
Yeah, I mean, congrats to Brock Purdy, right? You go from Mr. Irrelevant to Mr. Moneybags, like 118 million guaranteed is amazing. And I think it's just a testament to who he is as a dude. Like you come in, that you can play, but you're not the guy. And you didn't ever hear anything. Obviously, you're not going to hear anything from Mr. Irrelevant, but when he stepped in, it's been nothing but class and business. When you have Kyle Shanahan as your head coach, you're set up pretty good as a quarterback. And you had guys like Debo and Brandon Ayuk and those. We're gonna see, like you said, we're gonna see if he's able to produce at the same amount, the same way that he was producing before without some of those weapons and with a fat check now. They're gonna have to do a little more maneuvering around him, right? Especially over the next coming years. Not this year; they're in the rebuilding, but as they start to pay guys and build that roster around him, they're not gonna be able to pay him as much because he was on the lowest of the low rookie contracts, right? And it's gonna be interesting to see. I think it's awesome to see a guy that probably was never even thought about twice on draft day. I mean, I can imagine if we go back in history to the 49ers fan club, right? They're like, why did we take a quarterback with the Mr. Irrelevant pick, right? What are we doing? We have Jimmy Garoppolo. We have all these guys, right? And they're like, why? What's the point? Well, you look at his resume, right? And he had how many starts, right, in college? And yeah, it was at a smaller school, but man, like that matters. And I think the New Orleans Saints are taking a page right out of that book, right? Like we're taking a guy who has played for years in college, has shown that he can do it. Let's see if he can do it in the NFL. And if it translates, then who cares when he got picked, right? Who cares what his title is or where he went to college? And I think the same thing can be said for certain Lions draft picks, right? Maybe not at the same position, maybe not in the same round, but when you're all worried about what round and what school and all these things, man, GMs know who can play, right? And at the end of the day, that's who they're going to pay. So it's like we'll see if Brock Purdy. I think he's a great quarterback. I mean, maybe not the strongest arm in the world, maybe not some of these intangible qualities, maybe he can't scramble out of the pocket, but man, he can deliver a football where it needs to be delivered, when it needs to be delivered, and we've seen that, so that's why he got paid.
I think for me, I love what you say here. It doesn't matter where you get picked, and the GMs know, like you said, who can play, who can't. They study the tape more, the film more than anybody, on this planet, and that's what their scouts are good for. It is rare to see a quarterback go with the last pick of the draft, but I got to put this back in the 49ers' hands. I mean, what a pick.
What a pick.
A lot of people look at this pick like it's a throwaway pick. These are going to be nothing burgers in the NFL, and Brock Purdy absolutely showed up. I don't want to give him too many flowers, but what he did to command the offense in that second half of the 2023 NFC Championship, and he tore us apart. And he did make some off-schedule throws. He did scramble and do some things that we didn't expect that he was able to do. We know that he's got some feet. He may not be the fastest guy, but to your point, that's just not his game. He is able to hang in that pocket and deliver a good football. But I think this is where I'm gonna turn the tide on him a little bit. When Christian McCaffrey was healthy in 23, you couldn't have asked for a better option and a weapon out of the backfield and into the flats catching balls. You had Brandon Ayuk healthy. You had Deebo Samuel healthy. You had a very healthy trio of weapons. When those weapons slowly started to disappear, Brock Purdy went, 5-12 last year, I think? Is that Brock Purdy without weapons? Or is that just a collapse of a 49ers team that had a lot of injuries like the Lions did, couldn't overcome? And then I'm going to throw that right back in Jared Goff's lap. Jared Goff was able to overcome, even though he didn't have a ton of offensive injuries, he was able to overcome when the defense couldn't help us out. Brock last year maybe wasn't able to do that as good as Jared Goff. So it'd be interesting to see what he's able to do this year, and are they giving him enough weapons this year to be able to perform? Kyle Shanahan said this, man. He's a guy that I've got a lot of confidence in just as a human, but it starts with what he's done on the field the last 2.5 years, and capable of winning a Super Bowl with him. We just almost did, and I know he is capable of getting the Niners a Super Bowl in the future. So when you have that sort of confidence from your coach, man, that's got to make you feel great. Same style of confidence that Jared Goff feels from Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes. What are your final comments here on Brock Purdy and the Niners?
Yeah, I think you're right there. Those comments, kind of tell a story. When you have the confidence of your coach, and your coach is an offensive genius, that tells us something behind the curtain. And Trace in the comments said, she doesn't agree that he's worth that much. One of the things that you have to understand is that quarterbacks are always going to get paid, and it's only going to keep going up, right? As the years progress, right? Everyone's always setting a new standard for quarterback or for whatever position, and they're never going to regress, right? No one's ever going to say, give me a little less than that other guy. They all believe that they're worth so much, and so I think you're going to continue to see the market raise, and maybe Brock Purdy's not at the top, but man, like Kyle Shanahan has said, they almost won a Super Bowl with him. And so it's like, if he's gotten you there, then you have to believe that he's able to win it for you. You just got to get those pieces, like we said, back around him. And we'll see if they could do it. And but congrats to him, man. That dude was on a no man's salary. And so, I just think it's probably good for the guy. And from what we've seen, he is a good leader and a good quarterback. So hopefully not good enough to beat us, but yeah.
Yeah. So one more question. Do you feel like quarterbacks, and good points, right? Quarterbacks are always going to get paid. It's kind of like what I was saying about Jordan Love. He strong-armed the Packers because they didn't have an option. But not really the same point for Brock, but are quarterbacks getting paid for what they've done, or are they getting paid for what they will do? This has been this age-old, question that I think it can go a little bit of both ways. But what do you feel, for Brock Purdy here? Did he get paid for what he did or what he's going to do?
I think he got paid, technically for what he did, because I think no one expected him to be the guy he is. And so you kind of have to look at the product and say, yeah, I'm willing to pay for this. And if this will continue, then it's worth this much. You got to kind of forecast into the future. But like you said, and quarterback is a very unique position because you don't see other guys getting the reps. And so you can't really compare. You kind of just got to go with what you have. And if you believe in it, you pay for it. And if not, then you got to go another direction. But that direction takes a long time, and there are no guarantees. The grass is not always greener on the other side. And so, if you decide to move on from Jordan Love next year, who you drafted, who you trading for, what are the other options? And if not, maybe it's better to just stick with your guy who knows the system, and of course you're going to have to pay him maybe a little more than you'd like, but that security and knowing what you have might be worth that extra, couple million a year than trying to redevelop or find the next great quarterback, which is not a guarantee. We've seen teams try that over and over again and just fail. When's the last time the Jets had a good quarterback? Right? It's like, man, I don't know. They had Aaron Rodgers. He sucked, right? Now they have Justin Fields. We don't know about Justin. I know personally what I feel about Justin Fields, but it's like, man, you can swing and miss and swing and miss and swing and miss. And at what point do you just stop getting tired of swinging for the fences and just take a single or a double, man?
There you go. See, I love that analogy. I tell people that all the time. It's like, I would rather have 1,000 singles in my career than a home run every 10 games. I'd rather be getting on base and putting guys, onto home plate, and,
Scoring positions. Yeah,
yeah,
seriously.
than sitting here just hitting a home run every once in a while.
Yep.
And yeah, glad to see the resurrection of the Tigers, by the way. So I did see this just flash across my screen. I apologize, Trace, I missed it, but Trace sent in a $5 super chat. Says, come on, chat, get those like buttons smashed. I appreciate all you guys for doing that. Of course, my mods always handling things. When I get back, we're going to have a small upgrade to the channel. Very, very small. I'm going to see if you guys noticed it or not, but it's something that I learned this weekend when I had nothing to do but watch my phone. So it'll be interesting to see if you guys notice. I'll tell you once we get a week of testing in, but small upgrade. But Trace, appreciate you. Here you go.
Jake Bates from 57. There's the snap kick on its way. It is up and it is good.
Love it. Jake Bates, man, I can't wait to see what he does this year. So you mentioned the Saints a minute ago, and I think I had something about the Saints, and that would be Derek Carr. This didn't come out right away, but I noticed it this morning when I was digging for some information that Derek Carr had some real friction with the Saints that didn't surface right away, and he just retired from football. But according to sources and what was reported, there's been some eyebrows raised, especially at the newest report that suggested that there was this tension between him and the Saints. They obviously drafted Tyler Shuck in the second round, I believe. But he just ups and retires. But before he retired, he was reaching out to other teams. He was flirting around with other teams. He engaged with some other NFL teams before his retirement, and now that's been highlighted, suggesting that there's been some dissatisfaction with his current situation, that this isn't just about a shoulder, that he wants more, whether it's more money, more opportunity, more football players on his side of the football, some sort of a contract restructure, something. And then they go out and draft Tyler Shuck, which I don't think we expected Shuck to immediately start this year, especially with Derek Carr. Like he would have had to have unseat Derek Carr. Derek Carr decided to hang it up instead. My question is this: was there any damage done by Derek Carr reaching out to other teams? Now, after the window of when you can, start to negotiate with players during, what's it called? What's it called? It's the legal tampering period, but you know what I'm saying? Like, are you allowed to continue to do that? Or is it that window only? So did he tamper? Did other teams tamper with Derek Carr? I don't even know how many years are left on his contract, but Derek Carr can't come back to play unless his contract is done. So what are your thoughts on Derek Carr just hanging it up? And what do you think it's more about? Is it contract? Is it Tyler Shuck? Is it the injury? I guess, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's got to be a combination of all those things, right? And we talk about quarterback, we talk about that position and the weight that falls on it. It has so many variables that come into play, and obviously Derek Carr, a very good quarterback. I mean, I don't know if you call him elite. Has had some really, really productive and prolific years with stats wise, right? And I think when he went to the Saints, there was a vision for the future, but that didn't necessarily pan out. Whether that's injuries, lack of weapons around him, an aging roster. You got Alvin Kamara in the backfield, an aging running back. You got a couple weapons at receiver, but a lot of injuries. Christopher Olave just could not stay healthy, and he's got that shoulder injury, and I heard something that said, it was when they found out he was going to have surgery and then redo everything. He could have stayed on the roster and made a bunch of money, but he chose to retire. Now, was that him doing right by the team, or was that him, making his early escape so maybe he could take care of it on the side and pop up somewhere else? I don't know, but I do know that when all the parts around you are changing, it makes you reconsider, what your motivation is. And when you've had a long career, when you have a family, when I mean, maybe he knows something we don't, that he doesn't really have that fire within anymore, that, spending time with his sons and family is more important than chasing a Super Bowl. Maybe that makes that decision a little bit easier. But I know that having a young, hungry quarterback that's behind you that wants playing time is not easy, right? When you have a new head coach that handpicked that quarterback from the draft, that can't be easy. And the fact that you played against your head coach when you were in college probably is a little bit weird, right? Like thinking about that. Kellen Moore was at Boise State when Derek Carr was at Fresno State. So these guys have a past. They have a relationship together. That's just a weird factoid, but man, like you go into the offensive meeting and you're listening to the head coach talk to you and you're like, bro, I beat you in college. I mean, I don't know what the record was, but like that's gotta be weird, right? And so yeah, it's a very weird situation with Derek. And I think that flirtation thing with other teams, if we don't, I mean, I know in the NBA there was like the, well, create the super team. You got to think that that's got to be happening a little bit on the back end with, especially with the advent of social media and stuff. It's like these guys talk, they have relationships. You can't imagine that they don't. But yeah, how does that play into his decision? It's interesting. I'm going to take him at his word for, he wants to hang it up, but you never know, man. Ever since Tom Brady retired, you can't trust a retirement anymore. So
you really can't, but I think that he's kind of tied. And to your point, man, I think that he's had a great career to a degree. He didn't win what he wanted to win. He didn't do what he wanted to do. Every quarterback wants to win a Super Bowl. But when I think that every athlete knows when it's time to hang it up. And he's getting an opportunity to leave the sport that he loves, maybe fairly healthy, right? Maybe his head's not all, mashed up and he's got some shoulder injuries. And he'll have more injuries that pop up down the line. I'm sure he'll have some things that ache in, the rest of his life. But if you can leave the NFL after, what was it, 11, 12-year career?
Yeah.
And you're fairly intact, I think it's a win. He's made a couple $100 million, I think, over his career. I think he's good. Yeah, look, I was rooting for the guy. I just wanted to see him have a better career than his brother did, and I think he did. So it's a win all the way around. I didn't even think about the fact of Kellen Moore in the room, and he beat him in college. Like that just did not resonate to me. But that's fun to think about, right? Yeah. And a good job, Kellen Moore. Like he could never play for the Lions. He can, he was just always that smart guy on the sideline. He's definitely found his calling. I'm not so sure that the Saints are going to do much with him, but
no,
we'll see. I think he's an offensive play calling genius. 5
years.
But yeah,
5 years for him to get his. I mean, I say 5 years if he lasts that long. Or sometimes head coaches don't even get 5 years, right? But I think if he develops the program and picks players that he likes, that he wants, weapons. We saw Ben Johnson just do it. I think the Saints are at a different stage than the Bears, right? As far as like picking weapons. But I think once Kellen Moore gets there and he's got his quarterback now, I think of the future, we'll see how he treats that. But yeah, I think that team will get better in time. That they're not very good right now.
All right. So I'm going to transition into some Lions news, and then I have the question. All right. I prepped you on the question last week. So I'm going to ask you the question. And in the chat, everybody that watches this show knows my stance. It'll be reiterated today. But first, we have to give a giant congratulations to David Montgomery. Oh, maybe not. Hold on.
David Montgomery, better known as Demo, also known as Knuckles. Congratulations for a big-time job and graduating. It's going to be a big-time deal for you the rest of your life.
You got to make sure the audio is going. I don't think it's going. Hold on. Yeah, I think we were good.
David Montgomery, better known as Demo, also known as Knuckles. Congratulations for a big-time job and graduating. It's going to be a big-time deal for you the rest of your life. Also, Juju has a tremendous father to look up to, and this is just another feather in your cap, man. Congratulations.
Demo, congrats on graduating. Proud of you, man. Going back and getting it done. Love you. Good luck, and have fun.
What's up, Demo? I just want to say congratulations on graduating, man. That's a huge, huge deal. You know, I was wondering in the offseason why you weren't responding to my text, but it all makes sense, man. You were busy, you were studying. Congrats, man.
Hey, Demo, congratulations on graduating, bro. You beat the odds. Wish you nothing but the best. I'm thankful. You're a great teammate. Yeah, shout out to whoever got you through that. You didn't do it by yourself. So, yeah.
Congratulations, Demo. Yeah.
We love you. Hurry back. We got work to do. Yeah. Come on. We can't do this anymore, please.
Demo, big guy. Congratulations. A lot of respect for what you're doing. Past what you're doing on the football field, what you're doing for your son, showing them how you finish what you started is huge. Way to set the example, my boy. Congratulations.
All right, David Montgomery goes back to finish what he started, which is getting his college education. And as you heard from some of the guys there in the congratulations that was put together by the Detroit Lions, he was finishing what he started, but also representing for his son and his family and showing that, look, you got to finish what you start. You have to. And I think that this is just another great gesture by a good human being. I think that David Montgomery represents a lot of what Detroit is all about and what this team is all about, what the fans are all about. And he wanted to prove that he could, beat the odds to Craig Reynolds' statement there. And he did beat the odds by becoming a college graduate. So I want to say congratulations to Mr. David Montgomery, man. This is a huge accomplishment. He didn't need to, right? I mean, his pocket's loaded. He doesn't need to do this, but he wanted to do it. And it will open up more doors for him, in the future. And not that, the doors aren't opened already, but that college degree may help him in whatever he wants to do next, whatever that is. So big congratulations. And then I'll turn it over to you, Corey.
Yeah, for real. I think David Montgomery is a great representative of the game for multiple reasons. Awesome going back. I know it's a challenge once you leave school trying to go back, man. Like once you lose that momentum, it's probably double as hard to get back into school and get back in the swing of things. So taking on that challenge is amazing. And I think it just is a testament to who he is. And we've seen it in other ways with David Montgomery, like the way he shares the backfield with Gibbs and they support each other. Like that is what you want in a teammate. That is what you want in a football player. That's what you want, like as a man, right? Someone that isn't going to, want all the glory for himself. And I think, right, the way he's providing an example for his son is just another aspect of his personality that just makes you say, man, like I'm glad he's on our team. And what he can do on the football field is obviously not the limit of his potential. He's obviously a great dad, a great student, or else you're not graduating, and going to be great at whatever he does after football, which now probably has more opportunity with a degree under his belt. So yeah, congrats to Demo.
Yeah, I love it, man. Matter of fact, it is just another testament to the character of the Detroit Lions. I really want to know what Jameer meant when he said, hey, you got to thank whoever got you through that. You didn't do it alone. So we've heard that Jameer Gibbs is a pretty smart dude. Did he help Demo get through some of this stuff? I don't know. Maybe.
I'm sure he did. I'm having had a sibling who recently graduated college as well. Ahmed just graduated from Boise State, although he was at Lions rookie camp. I know that sometimes they may reach out for extra help from people that they care about.
just saying, right, Corey? Just saying.
Just saying. I'm saying. Yeah, just saying.
Oh, man. All right, so I've got to get into the question. This might be the most polarizing answer you give on this channel because, okay, let me just set it up. First, it's time for the question. Okay. I've been going round and round and round with everybody on this. It doesn't matter what channel. It doesn't matter what person I speak with, what Lions fan, what football fan. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying from my, I'll say, limited knowledge of football. Now, I've studied the game for a long time, played, coached, didn't play after high school, but coached, some youngins, my kids, but studied the game. And what I've been saying for years is exactly what Brad has been doing. Number one, lot of fans are mad at Brad Holmes because he didn't go out in the first round and go get a dominant edge rusher, at least in their eyes and from their opinion, that Brad failed because he didn't go lock up another could be dominant defensive end on the other side of Aiden. That's been a hot point of contention now for probably 2.5 seasons. You've got a really good one, right? Quasi elite Aiden Hutchinson. And now they want a second one. To, I guess, extrapolate this out a little bit further, when I've gone in and done my evaluation of the team after the season and what I expected in the offseason for free agency and then what I expected in the draft, the last 2 seasons, I kind of hit it, right? I said, I'm expecting cornerbacks, 2 of them in free agency, 2 of them in the draft. They did that last year. I was expecting for Brad to address the defensive line in the offseason. They did that with DJ Reader. This season, yes, of course, I wanted a couple of defensive ends. Not saying I wanted him to draft 2, but there was a couple that I really liked. Shamar Stewart, Nick Scorton, loved both of those guys. Jared Ivey a little bit later in the draft. And with all respect to your brother, I was not, I didn't go that deep, right? And I didn't see it. My fault. But that's not today's conversation. I, again, felt that it was defensive line. And if they passed on a defensive end in the first round, or if Scorton was gone, or if Shamar Stewart was gone, that I expected it to be Tyleik Williams, and that's who the Lions drafted. And the reason why I'm prefacing this is because I always felt that the best way to the quarterback is always A gap and B gap. That's the fastest way to the quarterback. And without a really good defensive interior, your defensive ends really can't do what they need to do. And if there's no pressure there, well, you can rush from the outside all you want. They're just going to beat you up the middle. Same on the other side. If you don't have, a guy that can set the edge at least and control that edge, they're going to take advantage of that. But if you have a good interior, they all work well together. I'm going to throw you my analogy, and this is what I used to teach my kids. Imagine a chain link fence or a chain link, okay? In the center is the middle of the chain. If that defensive tackle or nose tackle can break that center chain, well, now the offensive line kind of gets spread out a little bit. You've created pressure. You've broke that chain, and now these guys are separated on the offensive line a little bit. They're not together like they try to be and create that wall. And so once you get through that line, now everybody has an opportunity to, hit the gaps and win. The Lions also use a gap and a half scheme. That's their defensive scheme is gap and a half. So my question to you, with all of that information, do you think the Lions are doing it right by attacking the interior? They're building off of Ali McNeil. They're building off of DJ Reader and what will be the eventual replacement. Levi Onwuzurike, who's taken 3 seasons to finally do something last year, is expected to have a really good bounce back season this year. Career's been, just injury after injury with his back. How do you view the defensive line? Number one, is it best to have interior pressure? Do you believe that interior pressure is the best way to go? Or do you feel that outside pressure with the defensive ends is the best way to go and you address those first? So I guess you break it down. What's most important? This is not about, your brother and Ahmed or anything. Yeah. It's just break it down for us and what you view the defensive strategy and how it should be. And then I guess analyze the team and where this team is and has been over the last couple seasons.
Yeah, I think it's more complex than you'd think, right? Like you're talking about the offensive line being a chain link and wanting to break the interior of the chain because that separates, the core. And if you are only taking the end link off the chain, right, then there's still 4 links together, right? And so what I'm thinking of is, and to your point about the interior pass rush, one of the things that I think fans were talking about Tyleik is that he didn't have a lot of pass rush production in college. And it's, again, this is a scheme and now you got to get deep into the analysis to understand, what was his role in that defensive line, right? What is the role of his role on the Lions defensive line? Is he a run stopper first? right? To plug those gaps and occupy two blockers so that your edge can get free, right? Is he forcing, the interior of the offensive line to protect and set that pocket early? Is he collapsing the pocket? There are many roles that that a defensive lineman plays besides just rushing the passer, and they complement each other, right? So, you got two interior D linemen that are then, the core of the interior, but then you got exterior D linemen, edge rushers that their schemes and games and looping back around and slide protections and all these things that offenses will do to counteract those star edge rushers. And so the key, I think, on a defensive line is having versatile players who can do multiple things, right? And can complement the skill sets of the guys next to them. So if you got an interior run stopping D tackle, then it might be nice to have, someone with a little bit of pass rush next to him. And being able to interchange those roles between those two guys keeps the offense guessing, right? If this dude is always stuffing the run, and we don't have to worry about his pass rush, then we can put our best, offensive linemen or scheme ourselves to the other guys because we know that this guy's not going to get in. And I think what it really comes down to is putting pressure on the pocket, right? Not necessarily pressure on the quarterback, but putting pressure on the pocket, because how many sacks do you see? And this is something they said about my brother, said he's an effort rusher. He's going to be the guy that cleans up plays and gets sacks in that way. It's like quarterbacks, especially at this level, are great from throwing from a clean pocket. And you've seen Jared Goff, that pocket can be, in his lap and he can still get an accurate pass off. And so that pass rush, getting him to move, you'll hear a lot of analysis saying, get that quarterback off of his spot. Getting him off of his spot is huge. Wherever that comes from, whether that's from the interior, the exterior, if they got a guy, if the nose tackle, if McNeil's pushing upfield, that allows lanes for pass rushers to fill and then make a play. It is a dynamic, constantly moving and evolving process, right? Like week to week, game to game, down to down, different situations are going to present themselves, and how you react in real time is important. And so I think it's not all about sacks. I think it's not all about, who gets the stat on the play. It's more about how does that group work in conjunction with each other? How does it work within the bigger scheme of the defense? And like you said, like the gap and a half, that's not how everyone runs it, right? That's not how every defense works. And so getting the guys that fit your scheme are more important than getting guys, right? Like the guys and if they got the top, 6 elite pass rushers in this draft, right, are not guaranteed to pan out, and they're not all the same. The Falcons took 2, Michael Williams and James Pierce Jr. They traded up to get them. There's no guarantee that those guys are gonna be productive in the NFL, and you spent a lot of draft capital to go and get them. If the Lions went and did that, and then they did not produce immediately, are we going to then just, harp on the decision making of the leadership and say, like, what were you thinking, double dipping in a position when that's what we've been saying? We need edge rushers. We need edge rushers. And if they don't produce, then what? It's like, so I just think it's so much more complex than just a single position, than just a single stat, as in sacks or whatever. It's great when you see a guy get a bunch of sacks, but man, if you really watch football, they are so fickle, right? Like a guy might miss a sack when he should have had it, and then the next dude that shows up gets it. And it's like, man, like obviously they put incentives around those things, and it's an easy way to measure production and value, but in the deeper scheme of things, like it's way more, complex than just that stat.
Okay, let's get a little deeper, because you mentioned a few things. So my direct question would be, I mean, your playing experience, right? You've been on the field with some pretty intelligent people, right? You've been around your brother, you've been around the Boise State, squad, obviously your time, in college, and you've been around some really elite football players. Interior pass rush, exterior pass rush. What's the fastest way to the quarterback from a schematic standpoint? If all things are equal, right? You've got the best interior D lineman and the best defensive ends. What would be the fastest way to the quarterback?
Oh, it's A gaps. I mean, I played running back enough that when you pass protect, you go A out. You always protect A gap out. When you're in pat, whether you're on the right side or left side of the quarterback, when that offensive line slides one direction, you take A gap and then you work your way out. So, and I mentioned something earlier. I said Michael Williams. I meant Jalen Walker, same school, right?
Yeah, thanks, Brent, for the correction. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate that. But yeah, it's always the interior. Same thing on a punt, right? Fastest way to block a punt is through the middle, right? And that's just sheer like math, right?
It's geometry,
Fastest, man. It's geometry, exactly.
So I'm glad we're getting somewhere. So it's not so much that people don't trust, some of the things that I say. I think that we have some really good debates, if you will, and I think it's just some people kind of get butthurt over the fact that they're not getting their players and that they can't, they can't accept the fact that maybe Brad knows what he's doing. And you made another good point, right? So, some players will miss a sack and then it's cleanup duty. So Aiden, a lot of times will miss a sack and then it's the guy that is coming from the other side or through the middle that ends up cleaning it up. And it is what it is. But you know what? You'd rather have a bunch of guys being able to pursue and get through the line than just one singular guy doing it all the time. I get that. So interior pass rusher, A gap, I completely agree. When you watch what the Eagles did last year, they were able to win their one-on-ones. And I think a large part of that is because, they did have Carter, in the middle. They had Milton Williams, Josh Sweat. So they had a good, not only first grade, pass rush with their starting four, but their backups were pretty good too. When you look at what the Lions have established, Aleem McNeil last year was a top 6 at one point, but a top 10 defensive tackle at getting pressure and getting at the quarterback. Sacks may not be the biggest number, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Marcus Davenport, at the best time that he stayed healthy in his career, has always been a top 30 defensive end. DJ Reader was a top 20 last year throughout most of the season. I think he finished a little bit less than that. Obviously, as injuries happened, things happen, right? You're not going to be as effective, if you will, because you don't have a good enough supporting cast around you. And then there's Aiden, right? Aiden has been a top 10 statistical wise, but you mentioned stats really don't matter as much, or sacks don't matter as much. So the question is pressure or sacks. And I want to put it to you this way. I made the analogy before you came on last week that TFLs versus sacks, right? The TFL is a tackle behind the line of scrimmage of everybody else but the quarterback. And then a quarterback sack is a quarterback sack. I mean, a sack is just for the quarterback. So do you really care about sacks or TFLs, pressures versus sacks? Out of those few things, what is the most important? I go with TFLs because I'd rather have more opportunity to get guys behind the line of scrimmage and take them down versus just one guy. You've got a couple of running backs and receivers to worry about. Why not get more TFLs than sacks? And pressure. To your point, you want pressure on that box, or on that pocket. If you don't get the sack, you don't get the sack. But if you get that guy off his spot and he makes a bad decision, you're winning. That's why you got a really good defensive back group that can go in, make the play with a, pass defense, or hopefully like Kirby, pull the ball down with an interception. So pressure versus sacks, and TFLs versus sacks.
I think they all play off each other. And here's how I look at it. As an offensive coach, I think of being on schedule, right? It's first down after a touchback, and I want to move the ball down the field. Oftentimes, you have to have a balance of run and pass. And so when you're talking about a TFL, right, it could be a designed run for a quarterback. It could be a handoff. It could be a screen play behind the line of scrimmage, a quick screen pass, or anything like that. If we are making TFLs, we are setting ourselves up to get sacks. I think they play off of each other, right?
Good point.
When our offense is passing, they're in passing situations, and if you can stay on schedule, gaining, we all know it's 3.3 yards per rush, right, or something like that. You're going to get a first down after 3 plays, right? And so the key is getting an offense off schedule and putting them in predictable situations so that we can get sacks and pressure. So it goes, I think TFLs are extremely important. And how do TFLs happen? They happen from getting pressure. They don't just, you can get pressure on runs just like you can get pressure on passes. I think that that's something that my brother was really good at, and he wasn't always getting sacks in college, but man, he had a ton of quarterback hits and quarterback hurries, and getting into the backfield and making a play on a running back, setting up the defense and those DBs to make plays, and when the game is on the line or the situation depends on it, it becomes so much easier if you can predict when those things are going to happen, right? If it's 2nd and 5, we can do anything on offense, right? But if it's 2nd and 8, right, or 2nd and 12, we have a lot less options, right, because of what happened on first down. And so, holding your line, right, making sure we're making plays at or behind the line of scrimmage on run plays or on those plays that can be played like that, they're huge. And then when it comes to those passing situations, if it's 2nd and 12 or 3rd and 8, right? Now all of a sudden we get to pin our ears back and we get to get after the pass. We get to use some stunts. We get to use some games. And whether or not we get the sack, right? We get to pass rush, with a design to put that pressure on the quarterback. And that's when quarterbacks make bad decisions. That's when they get off schedule. They're rushing outside the pocket because they got pushed off their spot, and they make a crossbody throw that should have been picked or is picked or is taken back to the house with a pick 6, right? Like, there are so many other variables that come with pressure that don't show up on the stat sheet. No one sees that quarterback had a hand in his face, right? Or even getting your arms up, if you're not going to get to the quarterback, can change the trajectory and the way that quarterback is throwing the ball, which may put somebody in position to make a play down the field. And if we see an interception or if we see a pick 6, no one is wondering, hey, like, who was the guy that got pressure on the quarterback? It'll come back later. We'll see it on the highlight. Like, dang, he probably made that throw because he couldn't see his target, right? But we don't get a stat for that as a defensive line, right? But we know we're getting praised for it when we get back into film, though, and that's things that the average fan or isn't seeing live, especially. But it's definitely cheering when we get an interception or make a play. So yeah, I think it's TFLs and sacks, although they are different, are sacks are way more, glorified in the NFL. But TFLs are as valuable, if not more, as far as getting offenses off schedule. And then, pressures versus sacks, it would be great to clean up every pressure with a sack and get to the quarterback right before he gets rid of it. But they're told not to take sacks, right? Unless they have to. And unless you're Tom Brady, then you go down, at the touch of a finger. But that was at the end of his career. Like, goodness gracious, that was depressing watching him, stand in the pocket at the end of his career. But man, it's like, yeah, I think pressures are extremely important. And collapsing the pocket is so huge. And having a power guy opposite a speed and finesse guy can sometimes work, perfectly because they play off each other's strengths. One guy is collapsing on here, which is making the quarterback release to the other side, which has a dude waiting for him that can spin off of a block or whatever it takes. So man, it's complementary football at its best, and when it's done right, it is a beautiful thing to watch.
So I want to make sure people understand this in the audience. We didn't talk about this topic at all, period. Corey and I did not talk about it. I sent him a text last week and I said, I wanted to ask you this question, and that's it. It was just telling him the questions that I was going to ask so that he could think about it. What's enlightening, Corey, what makes me feel good right now is everything that you just said is everything that I've been saying. And I'm glad, I mean, you've said it more intricate than I did, but I'm glad that we're aligned on this, because I think that it shows your perspective comes from a place of, man, you've just been pretty much in the huddle with Boise State football and your brother and learning everything that they're doing, but understanding and seeing why they're doing what they're doing. And on your own stage, you know, when you were playing ball, but in coaching, right? You get it. You understand it. So from a fan's perspective, that if we're not coaching the college level or the high school level, these are things that maybe a lot of us wouldn't know or wouldn't understand, because again, to many points, it's you're watching the plays happen live, and yeah, you're cheering for the sack, but you didn't see the other side, or maybe you didn't notice, you know, the other side and what happened and why that player got a sack or was able to get the sack. So this is something that I call the hive defense. It's what I taught. And the best way I could teach younger kids was I used the analogy of a beehive, right? And I said, look, you're all a bunch of worker bees, and you're just trying to work together for a common goal. And that is to get the quarterback or to drop somebody in the backfield, but you have to back up. If you leave a hole, well, that's a hole for somebody to get through. You can't leave a hole. So everyone has to fill their gaps, work together. And then the chain link was another analogy that I use. That's why I talk about these things. And so I'm trying to give the younger minds something that they can relate to, something that they could understand. So that's why I refer to it as a hive defense, everybody working together. And if you're working together, I think you're going to have a better outcome. If you're working as independents, right? If you're just a freelancer, that usually doesn't work well for a defense, because you're going to put pressure on your defense when you start to create issues for them, right? If you start to create holes that they have to start to clean up. And I think that we noticed that in the very first or second season with the Lions, where, you know, like Alex Anzalone couldn't do what he needed to do because he was so worried about cleaning up the defensive line, and then what was behind him wasn't that great, and he had to clean that up too. So my next question would be this. And so I guess I'm glad that we're aligned on this, because I've caught a lot of flack for it, right? A lot of people didn't agree with me, and that's okay. That's what this channel is about too. We're going to have conversations. We can agree to disagree. Everyone knows, or at least should by now, that I respect you. I respect everyone's opinion. You can have an opinion. I just would love everyone to come on the show and let's talk about it. Like, let's have a conversation about it. So my next question would be defensive backfield. When you start to build out a defense and you start to get a few pieces on the defensive line, like you mentioned, you want that can crusher that Aaron Glenn calls it, which would be your right defensive end. And then you've got your speed guy, your left defensive end, or Aiden Hutchinson. Marcus Davenport is that perfect fit over there. And they're really hoping that he's going to stay healthy this year. They see it. And there's been comments coming out, you know, over the last week of how good Davenport has already been, you know, at some of these days that they've had practice. So when you build a good defensive line, I've heard the theory that, okay, well, that's just a coverage sack because your guys are doing their job in the backfield or in the defensive backfield, and they're able to hold, and now your defensive line is getting to the quarterback. So I don't necessarily believe in that. I mean, I do understand that, yeah, if they're able to hold over 3 seconds, which is eternity in the NFL, you have a better opportunity as a defensive line to get home. Conversely, if you can't hold, you're not going to get a sack ever or a TFL because that ball's coming out quick. And that is the other thing that I think a lot of fans maybe need to understand a little bit better on, and love to hear your ideas with this. But if your defensive back room is able to hold over 3 seconds, your ability to get to the quarterback or the quarterback to make a mistake or the play not to go well, I mean, it exponentially goes up in the defense's favor until it reaches like the 3.5, 4 second mark. Then it starts to go the other way. So if you're not able to get to the quarterback, you know, within those 3.5 seconds, that's a problem. But defensive sacks, I think like the quickest defensive sack last year was like 2.25 seconds. And the average was like 2.9 to 3. And Jared Goff gets the ball off at average 2.8 seconds. So that's why he shouldn't take a lot of sacks, you know, when you just combine the numbers together. So my question is this. How important is it to have a really good defensive backfield to help your defensive line and why?
Oh, that question should answer itself. I mean, it is. I saw it too many times. I'm gonna just say this. I saw it too many times last year when we were playing Boise State. I'm just gonna use what I watched, right, as a comparison. Boise State um, had an injury in the secondary of one of their safeties, and this was the guy that was responsible for coming up and filling the hot route, right? And so if you're not familiar with what the hot route is, it's like every play the quarterback has a guy that if the defense blitzes, this is where you're going with the ball. It's a zero beater, right? When they're in man coverage, you got to get the ball, and this is going to be the guy that you have. If that guy is not covered, there that play is successful every single time. And he could be covered by somebody, but if that guy can't do the job of covering him for 2 seconds, then there's no chance ever to get a sack because a quarterback will get it out to his target on time, and that play will be successful. And so when a defensive coordinator is scheming up blitzes, is scheming up a pass rush, it is so vital that he has the pass coverage schemed up to complement the pass rush. If you're a zone team, which the Lions are a man team, which makes it a little bit easier. But if you're a zone team, you're trying to trap the offense into throwing into a zone, and you could maybe roll a guy into a zone where he didn't start and then make a play. But in man, it is very simple. Guard your guy long enough for us to get to the quarterback. Period. And if we have to scheme an extra dude into the blitz, right? If we're running a stunt, right, and the interior D lineman is pushing out to that guard tackle combo, and we're looping a dude back in, that takes time, right? About 3 seconds. And so if we can't cover for 3 seconds, then it's never gonna work. It doesn't matter how dominant your players are, or how complex the blitzing scheme is, or whatever you're doing to try and get to the quarterback. If you're not covering the guys, the quarterback and plays are designed for the quarterback to have options on time. And this is one of the things I taught my high school and college guys. It's like, as a quarterback, you go through your progression, but there's also a progression in timing, and there's an internal clock in your head that when you're in that pocket and you're going, it's 1 to 2 to 3, then go. Then you're not going to hang in the pocket and keep reading and going back through your progressions because you know what's coming. There are people who are trying to kill you, literally, right? And you got to get that ball, that hot potato, out of your hands, or you're gonna die. Right? Like we see people get annihilated in the pocket because they're unaware, and some of the rookies have a huge time holding onto the ball. Right? Caleb Williams, Shedeur Sanders in college last year. When you don't have that internal clock to get rid of the ball, you're setting yourself up for failure. And that internal clock is determined by the coverage. It is covered sacks are not really a thing. Obviously, they are not the ones getting the sacks, but man, they are in principle so important to the defensive scheme, especially in man coverage, right? If Devontae Adams gets a clean release on the outside, Aaron Rodgers is not waiting till he's 25 yards down the field, right? When they were in their heyday, it was, he won now, let me put the ball up and let him go get it, right? That there's not a chance in the world for the best defensive lineman, the best edge rusher. I don't care who you have back there. Lawrence Taylor could be on the edge, but if I'm getting rid of it in a second and a half or 2 seconds because I saw that dude beat him off the line out of the corner of my eye in my first read, I'm letting it go, and I can wave to whoever you have or high five the dude. Patrick Mahomes loves to talk crap to the D lineman after he's already thrown the ball, right? And then jog down the field, right back for the first down because he's like, nice try, buddy. Like, that sucks. That sucks for the D lineman, and they're never going to go back in the huddle and yell at their DBs, but they know. It's like, man, can you please guard the guy so we can get to the quarterback? Yeah, it is. If all those words to say it's very, very important.
They all mesh together. They have to work together. It's not like these are, to your point, they're not individual groups working independently. It is supposed to be a symphony out there where these guys are working together. And, to your point, like you mentioned timing, and I was trying to drill this, into everybody's heads last year that, I pay attention to the time to sack or time to throw. And when you see a quarterback that's getting that ball off in 2.5 seconds consistently, yeah, good luck getting a sack. It's almost impossible. There's one metric that has been changed, and I don't know why PFF changed it. And just to throw this out there, like PFF, I use it for their statistical analysis. The grading, I probably give it a 75% weight. I mean, they got a lot of guys watching tape and film, and they're trying to come up with these numbers. But we can kind of do the same, at least for our own team, to see how they're performing. But I think largely they do a good job. It's not great. They do a good job. But the numbers that they put together for time to throw and like time to sack, if the average sack is 2.9 seconds, most of these quarterbacks can get the ball out in 2.5. Yeah, it's almost impossible to get a sack. However, there used to be something called a quick pressure. So there's like 12 different types of pressures. And that's going to be the next, we're totally off topic, but I love it. That's going to be the next question. So quick pressure used to be 2.5 seconds. And that used to be the only pressure time by PFF standards.
No.
Now that's changed. And now you have quick pressure under 2.5.
It should be back up now, but it looks like you're back up. I think everything's shut down for a second.
Interesting. Let me do something real quick. I turn my kilobytes down a little bit. Might be having a stream issue. You can hear and see me, right?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
I'm letting them know in the chat.
Yeah. If it happens again, I'll just restart the stream and we'll just go to a new link. But where was I at? Quick pressures.
Yep.
So, in the NFL, when these guys are trying to get to the quarterback again, if they're getting the ball out lightning fast, it's really hard to get. And I don't care what defensive end. I don't care if you're Myles Garrett. I don't care who you are. And the reason why I'm throwing this out there is because, last year you heard, a lot of fans not happy with our defensive end issue the last couple of years. And they're just saying, these guys are slow to the quarterback or whatever. And I just want to ask you from a pressure perspective, there's quick pressures and there's like 11 different other types of pressure. The way I understand it and what I've learned is if you are able to move a guard or a tackle just 1 yard back off the line, it's a pressure, right? That's what they're calling a pressure by PFF standards and in the other metric. That doesn't mean that you're in the quarterback's face. That doesn't mean that you're even affecting the quarterback. So when you look at these big gaudy numbers of 100 pressures or 90 pressures or 80 pressures, how many of them are just meeting the threshold, right? How much weight do you really put into it for them just meeting the threshold of what a pressure is? For me, I look at the quick pressure stats. That tells me how effective they were at getting into the backfield and potentially getting into the quarterback's face quickly. If you're doing it in 3 seconds, the ball's gone. But if you're doing it in 2.5, you have an opportunity to affect the play. So how do you view pressures, knowing and understanding, or at least you tell me what you know and understand about the quick pressure versus just moving, an offensive lineman a yard back into the pocket potentially, and is that really affecting the quarterback? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. Like, this is my first time actually hearing, the threshold for a quick pressure being just driving a guy 1 yard back. I know that if you think about how an offensive line sets up in a pass play, right? They're usually taking, not the interior, they're setting their blocks early, but the offensive tackles are, they're drop stepping, right? And then they're setting themselves. And so if you're taking him, from where he started to where he set up, which is probably like 3 yards back from where he started, and then you're pushing him another yard back, I can understand how that could be a quick pressure. But again, like offenses are designed to create a clean pocket. And so I would say maybe if you're an interior lineman getting a yard or two of a blowback, right, of a center or a guard, that to me feels like a pressure because that's the interior of the pocket. And to our point earlier, that's the straight line to the quarterback. That can push him off of his spot and make him want to escape to one of the sides. Now, if you're an edge rusher and you're only getting a yard of pushback, right, from the tackle, that means he probably won the tackle, right? That he set his anchor in the ground and he probably won. You're gonna have to either get around or loop back inside because it's not doing anything on the edges of the pocket. Um, I think a pressure is more accurately described as something that influences the quarterback in some way. I would say, like for me, when I am watching the game, I see pressure as something that's influenced the court in some way. A pressure could be 3 yards away and getting your hand up and running at the quarterback, right? Now I might not be within however the far distance is from the quarterback, but if he's being influenced by me in some way, shape, or form, that feels like a pressure to me. I don't know how PFF grades it. I don't know what the other 11 categories are, but I know that when we watch edge rushers, when we watch defensive linemen, we so often we talk about their quickness and their agility. Maybe their ability to disengage from blocks, or when we see, this guy has a great double hand swipe. What does that do? That allows them to get off of a block immediately and continue towards the quarterback unabated, right? Like second effort rushers and pressures are different because, right, basically you're saying you got stopped and you continued and you made a counter move or you adapted to the situation and then got under. That's not going to make a play in a quick game, right? That's not going to be able to get you to the quarterback in quick passing scenarios. Maybe it's off of a play action or something like that. You can do those. So I think all pressures are not all equal, obviously, right? And that's why they have 11 different categories of them. But the eventually, as long as you are impacting the quarterback in some way, that's how I would personally define a pressure. And I mean, speak to me on that. Like, what do you think the value of pressures are, and like, do you give all pressures equal value, or what is your stance on that?
Well, so to answer the latter, no, I don't give all pressures equal value. And that's why I kind of wanted to softball this towards you a little bit. And we're going to have to talk more about it, throughout the offseason and into the season, because I think that the anatomy of a pressure has really changed within the confines or the construct of how they're defining pressures has changed. But I think the way that they're being recorded is also changed. And I think it's kind of giving like a false sense of security or hope to fans that when they see, oh, this guy got, 100 pressures and 10 sacks. Well, how many of those pressures were under 2.5 seconds, right? Because, to all of our points here, if you're not able to affect the quarterback in 2.5 seconds or less, good luck affecting the play. If you're just pushing the quarterback a yard off of his spot, or the tackle or, guard off of their spot, 1 yard, well, was it a 3-step, 5-step, 7-step drop? What was it? Were you even into that pocket of the quarterback? It's all play specific. So I'm looking at this peak probability of a pressure. And what it says is a pressure zone, which is over 75%. Quick pressures that are sub 2.5 seconds have a peak probability of affecting the quarterback 75% of the time. So I think there's your answer. That if your time to pressure is between 0 and 2.5 seconds, you have a higher probability of affecting the play in the quarterback. If it's over 2.5 seconds, man, that starts to dip in a hurry because quarterbacks are able to navigate, get to their second, third read maybe by then, or maybe in their fourth if they have one, and get the ball out. So I just read something interesting while you were talking, and it made an analogy here to Parsons. So Micah Parsons had one of the fastest line of scrimmage. I guess how do I phrase this? He had the fastest pass rush get off times in 2022. 0.33 seconds to cross the line of scrimmage. I mean, that's a blink
Yeah.
and he's across the line, that's going to affect the quarterback. And you've probably gotten inside the tackle, got inside leverage, you're able, or you're even outside leverage, whatever path you're taking, but he probably got it really quickly. That is the 6th quickest on sacks since the start of 2022. It was the 6th fastest ever. So not many guys, are able to do it that fast. There was another thing that I wanted to throw out here, and that was, go ahead. You say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, well, when you think about that stat that you just gave, 0.33 seconds to get across the line of scrimmage, because when you think about offensive line, they're pass setting, right? They're dropping in their pass setting to block. So every millisecond that you can shave off of your get off is another, chance for you to get after the quarterback. And while they're still in their back pedal or dropping as a tackle, right, to get to their spot to create that pocket, if you can beat them there, right, that's going to help. One of the other things I was thinking off the top of my head while you're thinking, it's like we've seen the offenses change in the NFL, to these RPO schemes where I might be able to read your pressure and adapt off of it, right? So if I'm reading that defensive end and he's coming in hot and I have a bubble screen that he has to then go and try and tackle, right? It's going to be a lot. That pressure actually means nothing, right? Maybe I want you to get that pressure so that offensive tackle can get out on that secondary, right? And make a play downfield and I can get that ball out anyways, knowing that I have, a zero beater in a scheme. So this is interesting to think about, like how the team you're playing, the quarterback you're playing, the pass protection that they're setting up against you influences whether or not these pressure stats even matter, right? So it's very, very, very complex when it comes down to like the intricacies of the game, and it could change on a game by game, play by play, battle. And then when you talk about making adjustments, this is where coaches make their money, right? Is if we see in the first quarter that this guy can't block this guy, then if you're not changing up your scheme, if you're not adapting and in the middle of a game, then you're not going to be successful in the long run. And so, yeah, I think it's a very, very more intricate, more deep and complex topic than even I necessarily thought about before being asked this question. So thanks.
Well, and it's going to get deeper. So I know we're kind of up against the clock here. If you've got to run, I get it. So I sent you an email with one of the links, and it's just some of the things that I think about throughout the season, and I'm trying to respond to our fan base. And a big part of this fan base's gripe right now, or some of them, is not understanding why Brad Holmes is taking an interior defensive lineman versus an edge rusher. And, to the point that you made earlier about having, the big end versus the speed end, and why that's important, because they do two totally different things. It's all important. And I think that Brad is making the right moves, but these type of topics, these are the things that we can discuss. And especially having your level of knowledge about football, this is why this channel is so important to me, is because we can bring the conversation and the analytics and the stats and bring it to the fans and have these good conversations, and maybe point to a reference of fact, right, and stats as opposed to opinion. Everyone has an opinion like they have a what. So, and they're all great, but if we can point to facts, I think that holds a little bit more weight. And
Sure.
And when you mix facts with experience, I think that even holds greater weight. Last thing I want to throw at you, and this is something I just looked up because I didn't know this before. You mentioned big end versus speed end. And when you think of somebody like Aiden Hutchinson, who ran a 4.74 40, you don't think of that as intense speed, right? 4.74. But for somebody his size and what he's being asked to do, he looks way quicker than what we envision a 4.74 to be, especially when you see these guys flying down the field at, 4.4s and 4.35s when they're DBs and wide receivers. But then I looked at your brothers, 4.77.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if he's had a faster one than that, but barely any difference. So when I think of a big end and a speed end, well, now you've got this little bit shorter, compact, physical guy that's just as fast as Aiden. Now the twitch, the get off, those are different things to measure. So what is Ahmed, just initially without going through any training this year or whatever the lines are going to have him do, what box does he fit in? Is he a little bit of, I see him as a little bit of both, like set the edge and get after the quarterback. How do you envision him progressing this year?
Yeah, I think he is a versatile. I think he can do both. I think he can, especially as he develops that pass rush plan, right? And counter moves. I think you're going to see like that he's a hybrid of both. And with the natural leverage that he has being a little shorter and with his power, his speed to power, rush moves are his bread and butter, but his counter moves off of those are going to be just as deadly, I think, especially with NFL development. And when you have, Aiden Hutchinson, like you said, not the fastest dude, and maybe, I don't know his strength numbers, but man, like when you watch him, he doesn't look any less strong than anybody else, right? And his ability to make those counter moves, to spin off of a block and then get to the quarterback and diagnosing when to use what, that's going to be the key. And I think that's going to be the key for my brother is understanding like how to complement your strengths with other strengths and building up those, what aren't maybe his go-to moves now, working on them, repping them to the point where they become second nature. For me, as a receiver, I never had to think about my moves or after I got the ball, like what type of move I was going to, they were just reactionary to me. And I think it's a little harder at the defensive line, but these guys are not running 40s, right? We don't have to worry about their 40 time unless they're chasing a dude down from behind. All we got to worry about is their quickness in a phone booth, right? And their ability to get off a block and get guys' hands off them. And so some of those other variables are maybe more important. And just to kind of touch back on what you said, because it came to my mind, you're talking about what are the facts? Like we want to talk about facts versus opinion. Well, I know it's a fact that the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl last year. Okay, that's a fact. And if I look at how they set their team up, their strength on offense was the run game. We could talk about the tush push. We could talk about Saquon Barkley. We could talk about Jalen Hurts. But you better stop their run game before you stop their passing game, or else they're going to go and win another Super Bowl. How do you stop the tush push? Interior. How do you stop Saquon? Interior, right? How do you stop Jalen Hurts from escaping the pocket? It's interior and then the edges, right? And making sure you keep him contained in there. They all worked in conjunction. How did the Philadelphia Eagles beat Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs? With pressure from the interior, period, right? If you can isolate a team and take away a whole part of their game, right? The Kansas City Chiefs were never going to run on the Philadelphia Eagles, ever, right? They make them one-dimensional, and then they embarrass them in the Super Bowl, right? We need to do something similar. Not saying we need to be the Philadelphia Eagles, not saying we need to, have those players, but we need to have a lockdown interior to prevent certain aspects of the offensive scheme. And then we can get the hell after the quarterback, right? Then let's go get our sacks, right? My son's in the outside saying, yes, Dad. Yes, sacks. But hey, we got to stop the run, son. Stop the run first, and then we'll go get our sacks. And yes, Uncle Bud will get his. And then they're going to play Walk Like an Egyptian on the stand. And then we're all going to be celebrating and singing in the stands.
They've got to play that song. That's going to be perfect.
I may or may not have heard some rumors about something about that. May or may not. We only heard it here, so yeah.
All right.
We'll see if any don't go spreading that. We'll see who watches the show and who doesn't. And if any other media comes out with that, then they watched the show, because I'm not telling anybody else.
There you go. I would love to hear it. That'd be great. Two quick things. Tomorrow morning, I'm not planning on a show right now because I've got to go do a follow-up on my heart. If I do a show, it'll probably start early and finish early. So I'm just going to throw that out there. I'll decide tonight.
Okay.
Tyleek scheme. So I wrote this down. I forgot to come back to this because you mentioned Tyleek Williams, scheme at Ohio State and how some of the fan base or analysts were saying that he didn't have a whole lot of pass rush at Ohio State. But you mentioned scheme and how he was used. And I thought that's a very good point, because Tyleek in his first season at Ohio State was asked to be a pass rushing defensive lineman. And he had a very good first year. I think it was 5.5 sacks his first season. And then he had a total of, 10, 11, 12 throughout his career. So it slowed down a little bit. And the reason why is because then the scheme changed for him. Ohio State brought in some different athletes to do different things. They asked him to be a run stuffer. So it's just like looking at why Nick Scorton didn't have a ton of production, at Texas A&M when he came from Purdue and led the Big Ten in sacks. Well, he was asked to be a run stuffer and play within the scheme, different scheme. I look at Nick Scorton as the Purdue guy, not the Texas A&M guy, and what his ability could be. So that, again, casual fans may not know this, may not get that deep into it, may not hear about it. And I think that's part of what makes this show so fun, is that we try to look for these things and try to identify it and flush it out, and try to give us the best opportunity at understanding what's really going on. Anzalone's contract, maybe if I do a show tomorrow morning, that'll be part of the show. I don't know why this is flying right now. I think that it's a lot of nothing. I haven't heard that the Lions are even entertaining a contract extension, but I mentioned this months ago. He's on his last year. How does it affect his future in Detroit? We didn't take a bunch of linebackers in this draft, so I think that kind of gives you a little bit of an answer, at least right now. Anything you want to end with today? I want to end with this. Pressure stats, how they record them. The previous logic, according to this article here by 33rd Team, says that they used to identify pressures with tracking data, and it was relegated to a defender's proximity to the quarterback. Any pass attempt or sack where a defender was within 2 yards of the quarterback at the pass forward, or within 1.5 yards of the quarterback at any point during the play, was counted as a pressure. Think about that for a moment. If you were within 2 yards when the quarterback was being sacked, or you were within 1.5 yards at any point, so 4.5 feet away from the quarterback, it was counted as a pressure. That's
how they're doing it now.
That's the proximity that's the data that they were using. We're gonna get into this, I think, again when I get back from Florida. Let's study up on it. I did a whole segment on it, and I've written 1 million words since then, so I'd have to go back in some of my sheets to go find all of my old research, or I'll just research it again while I'm in the air. But let's do it again when I get back. I sent you an email on that. I love these topics.
Cool.
We didn't even do any of the topics that were really on the list in the second half of the show, and that's because things like this are, one, they're important, they're fun to talk about. It's good education. I would love to do some educational shows where you can help teach us about things that you know.
Yeah.
Like let's get into why 4-3 versus 3-4 defense, or why the 4-2-5 on certain plays versus, what I mean? Just get into the different schemes and do some educational stuff. I think it's important to do. So final 30 to you on the day, man. What are you looking forward to this week? Anything on your mind about anything, I guess, NFL, Lions, whatever.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to figuring out why my computer and my microphone were not working. What the heck is happening? I got to find that gremlin and choke him out so he stops bugging me, man. I'm happy to be back. I got to spend the weekend celebrating my daughter's birthday at Disneyland and got to take my son for his first time. And that's always fun. It's never fun to visit California, but it's fun to go to Disneyland and go and see the joy on faces at the happiest place on earth. I know, Will, you haven't ever been there, so we got to get you there, man. I'm gonna start my own fund here to get you to Disneyland because you deserve it, man. It's a great place. I got to grow up in Disneyland's backyard, and there's something about it, man. So I'm happy to be back, though. I'm happy to be talking football. Like I said, I got to figure out my IT stuff, but we'll get it handled, and then we keep it moving along, man. So yeah, very happy to be here.
There's a lot that we can figure out on your end too as we get motoring. I'll throw you some ideas. You know when I'm going to go to Disneyland when the Lions win the Super Bowl.
Well,
Because
book your
that's when
ticket,
they say
brother.
they're going. So I'll see you next spring.
Love it.
Right?
I'm down. I'll be there too.
I'll see you next spring. What is this in the chat? Real quick before I go. Brent Lighton says Ragnow tore his pec. DJ Reader had a minor shoulder. Neither injury is expected to affect 2025 at all. This is not new stuff, right? You're talking about last year, I believe. Yeah, this is not new stuff. So that's last year's stuff. Just want to clarify that. All right. I'll see you guys possibly tomorrow morning. I'll let you know tonight. If I put out the thumb tonight, just plan on it. And, of course, Corey, if you're going to be around tomorrow morning, you're more than welcome to join. And, man, I love the energy, dude. I love the football knowledge. And I think that's what I'll end with today is the channel is gaining some knowledge, and it's needed. I think the fan base loves it. So appreciate you as always. Appreciate all the fans and the audience, of course. Let's keep on motoring for 2025. Go on, Pride, go Detroit Lions. We'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, 1 2 1 2. 1 2 1 2. Mic check. Hey, can y'all hear me out there? Hey. Against all odds. Against all odds. Against all odds. Against all odds. Against all odds.